Hi, I'm Justin Kloss, and I'm an application developer at Crema, and today we're going to be talking about type policies in Apollo Client 3. We at Crema are huge fans of GraphQL, and so it's kind of a no-brainer for us as soon as we're ready to interact with our GraphQL backends to bring in Apollo Client for handling that in the front end. So it's something we feel pretty passionate about, and I thought I would get us started on maybe a series of videos around the newest iteration of Apollo Client. If you're not familiar with GraphQL and you're not familiar with Apollo Client, we do have some links below that you can reference that might be good to watch before jumping back into this video. If you did come here having a good understanding of both of those things and are confused about what type policies are and how to best leverage them in a new and existing project, you're in the right place. So let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully you found this video because you, like myself, were a little bit confused around type policies when V3 came out, and we're just hoping to find some more clarity on use cases and yeah, just what you can do with them. I think there are kind of just a few sort of default scenarios like pagination and just kind of handling how your data is merged and read as far as lists are concerned. There's a little less focus on kind of what else you can do with it in the documentation. I mean, they touch on it a little bit, but I thought it might be good to give kind of a real world example just to kind of hopefully shed some light on kind of what's happening under the hood here and how you might be able to best leverage it in a project. So as you can see here, I've got VS Code open and then also my iOS simulator. Currently working on an app that captures quotes, and then the app is then used to recall your quotes. So that's what we'll be working with today. What we have here is all of my cache logic. This, if you're familiar at all with the new API, we have what's called reactive variables, which is kind of Apollo's answer to maybe some use cases for like Redux or the context API. So if you have any sort of global state that you're trying to manage in your application, and they don't necessarily have to live up here like I have them, I'm just kind of spreading them down here. I was trying to make this a little more readable, but these are all of my reactive variables. This is a custom merge function that I'm using in a couple of places. And so these two fields here are my quotes and tags, so the list of quotes and tags. And all you really need to know for now, because I'm going to cover this more in another video, is that we're handling how that incoming data is merged into the already existing array. And so we're actually normalizing that data and making sure that there are any duplicate pieces in that data. So what I really kind of wanted to demonstrate was what I've seen less of. There's actually a really great video that I will post a link to that is, and I'm so sorry, there's a content creator who had brought on one of the developers from Apollo client, and I apologize because both their names are escaping me at the moment, but it's a good resource, and they kind of cover this pretty extensively as well. I kind of just wanted to create a video that really primarily focused on one aspect and was maybe a little more directed. So with that, we can see here in my application, we have tags and quotes. We're going to just be manipulating the quotes for the sake of this tutorial. You can see over here we've got a flat list of quotes, and a quote is made up of a few fields, some of which are not displayed that don't matter to any sort of display logic. But what we'll focus on today is we've got a body, we've got our created at date, we've got our source, and then our tags that are related to the quote. And I'm actually going to do a quick save. And apologies for some of the errors that are going to be coming up throughout the tutorial. That has nothing to do with what I'm showing you right now, but it is something I should fix. Let's just kind of start by targeting our quotes. So we have a way to target various fields. In this case, we have our quotes, and then we want to specifically manipulate or change rather how one of those fields is read. You can see here I already have some custom logic for handling the merging and reading of the quote tags. But if we wanted to change how body is being read from the cache, we can. We can use this read function, and from that can pull the existing data. And if we were to just simply return that, nothing would change. So we're just returning the value. That's really what we'd expect to happen there. So we don't have any type inference here, but what we can do is go ahead and just establish that we know that this is of type string, and that will open up our string methods that we can then append to this here. Just to kind of demonstrate how we can manipulate this, we could do something silly like replace all O's with the @ sign. And so now we can see that we've replaced all O's with the @ sign. Maybe we want to show something a little more practical here though. So use template literal. And let's say, this is a quote app, right? So the way that we're storing quotes on the server side is just a string, and we aren't necessarily adding quotations to that piece of data. That's probably not something that we'd want to save in the database. I guess it certainly wouldn't hurt anything, but that's more of like a display logic. So, we could take this as an opportunity to say, I want all my quotes to be wrapped in quotation marks to demonstrate that they are quotes. So we can now see that our body, in this case, the body of the quote, is wrapped in quotation marks. Similarly, if we wanted to do something with source here, we could, copy and paste this exact logic, and now we can see that the source is wrapped in quotation marks. That's a really basic example. But let's say we want to take on something a little more advanced. I was thinking about this today. I've got this created at date that I'm using in two ways. One is as a display value. So on each of my quote cards, I've got a created at date just for the user to see, so they know when it was that they captured this quote. It's also being used as a cursor for the cursor pagination that I'm using in the app. If I wanted to manipulate that particular field, I probably wouldn't want to just say, created at, and then go through the process that I just showed, where I'm going to change, manipulate that value here. But what I can do is I can actually create a custom field. And so the goal here is I'm going to create this custom field called formatted date. And the idea is I'm going to make that a part of this quote query, so that instead of doing that logic at the component level, I can just handle that here, and then I can, from the query at the component level, say, that the created at value will be the value of formatted date. You might be wondering, how do we do that? This is a field that doesn't exist. That's the fun part. We know that the data that we want to use for this particular field already exists. It's coming back from the server, but it's not under the name of formatted date. It's under the name of created at. Well, so we can call in that same read function. And in this case, we're going to bypass that first argument because there's no existing data for formatted date. It's not a field. But what we are going to do is destructure the second argument so that we can get a method called read field. So let's go ahead and create a variable. We'll call it date. Actually, no, let's call it formatted date. Be consistent. And so formatted date is going to be equal to our read field method. And specifically, we're going to be reading the field created at. So what this means is if we were to, we'd need an active query that was querying this field. But if we were to do so and we were console logging this, what we would see is the value of our timestamp that's coming back from the server. What I want to do from here is, and actually let's not call this formatted date. Let's just call this created at, because that's what it is. It's our created at. And then ultimately, the formatted date is going to be equal to bring in day.js and pass in created at, and we want to format it. And I might need to look at what my format looks like at the component level. So basically, read field can return a number of things, and we can go ahead and tell it specifically what this is going to be returning. In this case, we know that this value is a string. It's a timestamp that's generated from the database, but it's ultimately coming back to us as a string, and so. We also need to be passing in the correct value here. Okay, so created as getting passed in. We're using day.js to format this string into this value here. So I'm going to go back to card quote. What is format date? Okay, well, that's not entirely accurate. Let's just do this. All right. Okay, so sorry. For those of you who haven't used day.js before, we can wrap our date value in their provided method here, and then there are several methods that we can append to that to pull out the day, the Unix value, whatever. In this case, we're just trying to format the date. And this is the format that we know we want. We want to have the month followed by a comma, and then the digits for the day, and then the digits for the year. And then ultimately, this is going to return formatted date. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that. And then what we'll need to do from here, so currently this query has no concept of formatted date. It doesn't know what that is, doesn't know that it exists. So what we can do is we can say, for quotes, we have a field formatted date, and we're actually going to be getting that from the client side. So this tells Apollo to read or to pull this field from the client. All right, so we're getting close. So what we've done so far is we have created a custom field in our quotes type called formatted date. We've pulled in our read function. Because we don't have any existing data, we've bypassed that first argument because we aren't manipulating any sort of existing data. Instead, what we're doing is we're reading the field created at, so we then have that value, and with that value, we are using day.js to format it in the way that we want. And ultimately, that's what's getting returned. In our get quotes query, we are adding that new field called formatted date, and then we're specifying that that is a client-side field. So if we go to card quote, and we go here, so this might not be necessary now. We'll keep this check in here anyway, just for now. I don't think it's necessary because I'm pretty sure that's just a required field, but just for the sake of not breaking things, yeah, we'll just do it this way. And I apologize if this is confusing at all. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna get rid of this. So right now we know what we want to be here, and so this isn't going to be inferred, right? Because we haven't updated our types to reflect the fact that we now have this formatted at field, or formatted date field. Okay, so quote.formatted date is now being passed in there. Let's just refresh the app completely. All right, and we see the same date that we had before. But now all we have to do is call on quote.formatted date rather than having to handle all that logic here at the component level. Just for your benefit, let's just go ahead and console log this value here, just so that we can show in the console that it is in fact, just reiterate this is working. So quote.formatted date, there we can see our formatted dates. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so while we've only really scratched the surface of what we can do with type policies in Apollo Client 3, my hope is that this tutorial today put you in a better position to know how to best leverage them in a current or existing project. And if you felt like there was anything that wasn't clear or I didn't answer correctly, please don't hesitate to leave any questions or comments below. And definitely let us know if you want to see more videos like this. I really enjoyed putting this tutorial together for you all and would love to do more. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.